Troels Thøgersen, Danish football expert, former editor-in-chief at Tipsblad. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're a gentleman. You're a gentleman. It's fairly clear where we're going with this. We're during the international break. Denmark have had a goalless draw with Scotland and then a pretty eye-catching 3-0 win in Greece. So 4 points out of 6. I'm sure it's pretty happy return overall. What was the role of the United players in that?
Well, it was perhaps slightly smaller than we would have anticipated before summer. As you know, Rasmus Hojlund has been caught up. Does he have a future at United? Is he going to leave? He ended up going to Napoli. He hasn't played a whole lot of competitive football. And, I think that swayed the Denmark manager, Brian Riemer, to play him from the bench, which Hojlund did, both against Scotland and against Greece. A bit more surprising for me, actually, was Patrick Dorgu going on the bench as well, and Dorgu also coming on. I personally had Dorgu penciled in as a starter for Denmark, maybe especially in the first fixture with Scotland in Copenhagen, because I think pretty much everyone in following the Denmark team knew that Scotland would sit back. They would prohibit Scott McTominay from going forward pretty much all the match. That's what happened. Scotland were defending. They were defending well. It made sense to play Patrick Dorgu on the wing and on the back, and getting his runs, his dynamic ability, try to set them up and do something, because, and especially this time around, Denmark missed a few attacking key players, I'd say, especially Gustav Isaksen, plays in Lazio. So they needed someone with pace. They needed someone to break down a defense. And I thought, well, that should be Patrick Dorgu, but he played a different back instead. So, for both Hojlund and Dorgu, they were subbed on second half, both against Scotland and against Greece. And I think both of them did well, but the thing is, it can be a bit hard, to show a whole lot of stuff when you come on late in internationals, especially early internationals like these. Maybe it's not a whole lot at stake yet. I think it kind of showed, but still, I think there were some interesting points with both players in these games.
And I suppose from a purely United perspective, it's nice to see them combining for the third goal against Greece. Obviously, just not in the way that you might expect. Watching it back, well, I'll tell you what, you walk us through it.
Yeah. Denmark against Greece. Denmark had a whole lot of counter-attacking chances, especially in the second half. Greece half-heartedly tried to push forward, left acres of space. Patrick Dorgu used that in one instance to round the goalkeeper, and then somehow hit the post with an open goal. That was rather baffling. And then fortunately the rebound just landed in front of Rasmus Hojlund, and he could tap it in very easily for the 3-0. So in that way, the two Danes, they still combined for a goal that definitely killed off Greece and every sort of doubt about that game. So yeah, no, they did. I think they did quite well. I think especially for Hojlund. I know he scored against Greece, but it was the first game where I really noticed him against Scotland, because Denmark really struggled in that game. They struggled with breaking down Scotland. Scott McTominay did well as a holding midfielder, frustrating the Danes. They lacked pace. They lacked someone who could break down the defense or stretch it or just do something. And Hojlund, I think, came on and did that against Scotland, who were rather comfortable until I think the final minutes when Denmark started to threaten. And Hojlund, he looked a bit like his old self. I'd say he's had a rough year as well with the Denmark national side. It's not only at United; it was also with Denmark where he had difficulty, both scoring, but also even reaching, the chances and, finding the pass from the midfielders. So it was good to see him being energetic, being, on the front foot, seeking out opportunities. So maybe I'm reading too much into it, but he also said he was relieved. He was happy that his situation was settled and he moved to Napoli and now he could look forward. And I think you could almost tell that, weight had been lifted from his shoulders.
That's very nice to hear, because I mean, obviously the future will show us what happens when, he's still a United player. Whether there's a future for him at Old Trafford, we'll see. But you don't like to see players struggling, do you? And if it does seem like he's been, I mean, obviously the very early days, but if it does sound like he's feeling a bit better, a bit more liberated, then that's what you want to hear, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's been a quite big question here in Denmark, because everyone can tell that when all the strikers are on form, it's going to be Hojlund who plays for Denmark up front in the starting lineup. So there's been some anxiety about him and his poor year with United, with Denmark, the uncertainty with his future. It's really important to see him go to Napoli, where obviously he has to start converting his chances. He has to, regain his confidence, which clearly evaporated in those last months at United. But I think everyone's optimistic right now that, he couldn't have found a better chance to refine his form and start developing again after 2 mostly frustrating years at United. So optimism and a belief that he'll do well for a Denmark team that will probably go to the World Cup in North America next year.
Not to make you the spokesman of an entire nation, because that's a lot of pressure, but just generally, just wondering how was Rasmus's position generally seen around sort of the football media in Denmark, and I suppose the football audience in Denmark, just because it's personally I was very conflicted over it, because in his first season, I think just from the wide variety of goals that he would score, different types of finishes, I think there was a lot of hope there for the second season. But then starting that with an injury in pre-season, not having another senior striker, having all the attacking burden on his shoulders, it just felt like an unfortunate situation for him to be in. But that's just how I felt. I felt very conflicted over it. So I just wonder what you thought.
Yeah. I think Hojlund, he has a fairly special place, I think, in for the Danish football audience, because he broke through at the Danish national team and in Atalanta in Italy, like he did. He was basically a cast-off at the FC Copenhagen
Right.
just a few years ago. Copenhagen, they brought in 2-3 new strikers and basically let Hojlund go for a rather small fee and let him go to Austria. So he was, and then in the span of less than 2 years, he became a national team striker. He became a big star, and he came with this dynamic, aggressive style that had lacked for Denmark for a few years. Denmark really needed a type like him, and people started quickly invoking a Danish folk hero of sorts from the 80s, Preben Elkjær. He was a number 9 striker, like a sidekick to Michael Laudrup, who your audience probably know. Laudrup was the creative one, and Preben Elkjær was the eccentric, fox in the box, and he could do so many things. And people saw the same, maybe not stylistic, not in every sense, but the same cheekiness, the same optimism in Rasmus Hojlund, and people were so happy to see him break through.
Yeah.
And then the downfall, especially in the second year in Manchester United, was disheartening, and I think many people here saw this as linked to Manchester United's general malaise. Sorry to say, but it's people in Denmark, there's a whole lot of Manchester United fans and other people, other football fans also know United's history and follow the club closely. So everyone here knows that it's not only Rasmus Hojlund. You know, there's so many great players have come to United in the last 11, 12, 13 years and failed, or at most played up to par. And then when they left again, you know, all of a sudden they could play football again. And again, look at Scott McTominay. That's just one incident of it, right? So people, I don't think people were putting the blame on Rasmus Hojlund and thinking that, you know, this is a player who's never going to make it and we overrated him and all that. It was seen as something linked to a chaotic, underperforming Manchester United with, you know, an abundance of problems that, you know, wasn't the fault of a young striker who was given probably too much responsibility. So I think there's a general relief and a sense of relief and happiness. I'd say that Napoli, Italian champions, there's every chance that Hojlund will play, with unfortunately Romelu Lukaku being out for, it seems, for several months yet. So Hojlund, he won't get a better chance to play. Napoli normally know what they're doing. Napoli also scouted Hojlund, you know, they couldn't avoid to when he was playing at Atalanta. So Hojlund is not an unknown entity to anyone at Napoli. They know what they're getting. They know how to use him. They know what he needs to develop. So I think it's a perfect situation for Hojlund.
Brilliant. And while he's speaking on behalf of all of Denmark, how is Patrick Dorgu seen? Because one thing that I noticed with the goal was that he was on the right hand side. Is he seen as a kind of a versatile player that can pop up anywhere? Yeah,
he is. He was. Yeah, he came on the right side, and yeah, normally I'd say he should play the left back for Denmark. He is a versatile player. Someone Brian Riemer surely wants in his squad, and yes, there is discussion of what's his best position. Where should we play him? Because obviously he's not a defensive liability in that sense, but he's not your stout, traditional, old school left back who'll hoof the ball out. His forces are you know, coming forward, participating in the attacking play, and so there's definitely a debate about where to play him, and you know, can you play him against strong opponents as a part of a back four? That's an ongoing discussion. And I'm sure one that will maybe pop up at Manchester United as well, because what will happen, you know, now he's been benched for a few weeks. What will happen if Manchester United change their manager once again? What will happen to Patrick Dorgu? So, you know, I think some of the same questions that hovered over Rasmus Hojlund, and they also did when he signed for United 2 years ago. Same questions are hovering over Patrick Dorgu. What will happen to this young, rather inexperienced player if something was to happen at United? So I can promise you, the football audience in Denmark is following this closely.
I would say he's generally started fairly well. Certainly, I thought there was more to come from him last season, but first 6 months, joining mid-season, you can't really judge a player, can you? Pre-season this time around, he's been pretty eye-catching, pretty energetic. I think there was just the Burnley game where there was a bit of a shift, which was obviously post-Grimsby. So I should imagine that he's got a pretty secure place in the team. But I don't know. I think there's a gentle expectation and quiet optimism around him from this end, anyway.
Yeah, and I think he's probably seen as someone who should be playing at United, but you know, I think the football fans here in Denmark are quite observant, and they are following the situation at United, and they've also seen Ruben Amorim be, shall we say, emotional in post-game interviews and give hints of this and that. Right. So I don't think any fans here are thinking that, okay, Dorgu is at United now. He's a surefire starter for at Old Trafford for the next 10 years. Definitely not. There's some there are some nerves about what will happen to him, especially if there's a change at manager.
Right. Okay. Well, fingers crossed that the games come back and he gets back in the team, gets firing again.
Yeah. Oh, he'd love that. He'd love that. You could see he was very energetic when he came on for Denmark against Greece. Even if the game was closed out, Denmark played a really good game, composed, intelligent, no threat from Greece whatsoever. But Dorgu, he still came on, and you could tell that at least to me, he wanted to show the manager that play me the next time around.
Yeah,
you won't regret it.
Brilliant. Well, that's really. I mean, Ruben's come out and said that's what he wants. He wants people fighting to get in that team, and that's what any good manager of any team wants, I suppose. So
yeah. But it made sense to that there should be consequences after Grimsby. Makes sense.
Well, for everyone, I would say. But yeah,
exactly.
That's great. That's great. Troels, thank you so much for your time. Top man.
Well,